My bae caught me reading. Hey everyone, welcome to Notes from Grace, where I talk about all kinds of stuff. Things about me, about the stuff that I've been reading or playing or liking lately, and an assortment of other things. This week our episode will be a little more serious than usual because I want to do a book review of the wonderful, amazing book American Gods by Neil Gaiman. I recently finished this. I started reading it during a recent trip. I bought it as a backup in case my tablet died or my phone, or in case there was no Wi-Fi, which was the case for many of the airports here. I didn't want to pay for their stupid Wi-Fi, so I was like, you know what, whatever, I'm gonna go analog and read my book. And turns out I really enjoyed it. Took me a while to finish. As you can see, it's quite a long read, but it's very enjoyable. I've been reading Neil Gaiman for a while. I like most of his stuff that I've read. Actually, I've liked every book by him that I've read before. This one in particular, I thought was very good. I thought it was very well written, and I found that even though my attention span is not the greatest sometimes, I couldn't tear myself away from it. I kept coming back to it. Sometimes even during meals I'd be like, do I watch TV and eat, or do I read and eat? And that's what I ended up doing. Without spoiling it too much, American Gods is the story of a guy named Shadow. He goes on a journey. He has a partner and he meets many interesting characters along the way that may or may not be deities. Now, if that doesn't get you going, I have to say there's a little horror there mixed in for your pleasure if you like that sort of stuff, a little fantasy. Some people categorize this book as science fiction. I wouldn't say so much science fiction, but definitely stuff that is out of the ordinary but interweaved with everyday life and even very human matters such as death. So it's definitely worth a read. There were many things that I really enjoyed about this book, and I was surprised by it because when I picked it up and I read the synopsis, and even throughout the first chapter or two, I was a little skeptical. I didn't know if I was going to like it as well as I liked the ocean at the end of the lane or Stardust. So, I was like, I better keep up with it, but it at the end, I was very sad to let it go. In fact, I put off finishing it for a few weeks. I would just save the last few chapters and be like, maybe tomorrow, maybe the next day, maybe next week, because I just didn't want to part ways with it. The characters definitely grew on me, even though some people supposedly say that they're not relatable. Not every book is written about a character that's just like you. That's the beauty of literature. There's all sorts of characters and situations that aren't necessarily like anything in your world, and that's what's so wonderful about it. You can see life through different eyes from your own. Isn't that why we read and watch movies and enjoy stories, to see a different perspective? I thought the mixture of genres in this book was fantastic. There's a little bit of everything for everybody. Like I said earlier, there's a little bit of horror and fantasy and maybe a bit of science fiction here and there, and just at the same time some realism. And what's so great about that is that it kind of helps you explore genres that you wouldn't have otherwise considered. Especially for myself, I've never been a fan of horror just because I get scared really easily. But with this, I found myself really enjoying some of it. I'm not gonna spoil too much, but a few gruesome things here and there that I would normally be very put off reading. I thought they were kind of yummy, kind of interesting. I'm not saying that corpses are yummy, gross. No, really made me rethink horror as a genre. Like, I might explore more books in the genre now after reading American Gods, just because it just dealt so well with it. And it might be the same for you with fantasy, for example. If you're not into fantasy too much, but you give this book a try, you might find yourself feeling curious about it and looking up other books within the same vein. So that's really great. It kind of encourages you to try new things. And I think that's a general theme with this book in many ways, on many levels, but we'll talk about that later. I also really enjoyed the little short stories or asides that were at the end of chapters that weren't necessarily part of the main storyline. For example, the little stories about all the gods and demigods that came to America. Minor spoiler. And some of them were so interesting that I found myself wanting to know more. Maybe I thought, I wish this was a book on its own and I'd go and read it. Specifically, the one with Agasu and Wututu. I thought that one was brilliantly written. It made me cry a couple of times. It was very powerful. And there were others that were just fun. The one with Bilkis, I don't know if I'm butchering her name, but her little side story was great and very funny. I think women everywhere will enjoy the ending for that one. Also, the one with Salim and the Jinn, the ending, I was like, Shyamalan twist! Wow! It was really funny, really shocking, but in a good way. Another thing that was huge for me with this book was that romance was not a focus. And that was a very welcome addition here, because as a woman, I'm so used to romance being thrown at me as a feminine or female theme that should be by default included in every narrative aimed at my gender. And it's okay. I mean, a little romance here and there is fine. Hey, listen, I'm a huge fan of Sailor Moon, and Mamoru and Usagi are my OTP, but sometimes I don't need all that stuff. And in this book, you don't really get it, and that's wonderful. Of course, yes, Shadow and his wife, there are a few things there between them, but they're certainly not at the heart of the novel. I love that it avoids really tired tropes like the rescue the princess or impress the ladies type situation that can be the pitfall of many books, many novels that have action and fantasy and so forth and so on. Here, that was not present. I didn't see it. He wasn't trying to rescue anyone. Really, he was just trying to be a good guy, trying to do his part. So, and without all of that generic stuff thrown in, it became a very unique, very enjoyable narrative. So I commend Neil Gaiman for that. Also, another thing that I definitely appreciated about Neil Gaiman's American Gods is how vivid the atmospheres were. There's not a whole lot of change throughout the book in terms of weather and location. Well, they do change location quite a few times, but it happens mostly over winter. And I swear that for the most part, while I was reading this book, I felt like it was really cold and cloudy outside. And it is summer right now. So to do that to the reader, you have to be very masterful at describing your places, your weather, your characters' feelings. It was bone chilling at times, and to me that was really special. It kind of cooled me down because it has been a bit of a hot summer sometimes. So Neil Gaiman, master of atmospheres. And you know what? If you think it's too cold, you can always grab a blanket and a nice cup of tea, and that makes for even more enjoyable reading. So I don't have a whole lot of criticisms about American Gods, other than the fact that at some points, it made me feel very deeply sad. I'm not one for thinking about death at all. In fact, it kinda scares me. But with this book, you're sort of forced to really stop and think very deeply and just wonder and ponder about your own mortality and that of the people you love, which is not an easy thing to do. I hate to think about that. I prefer to believe that we're always going to be alive and fine and young. But with this book, it just brings it up, and it's like, hey, death is totes real and it's no picnic. But it also doesn't show it as something terrible. Still a little scary. American Gods really takes you out of your comfort zone and pushes you a little It's not necessarily a bad thing when a book pushes you out of your comfort zone and makes you reflect upon things that you may have been avoiding. Matters such as death, right? And the ends of relationships, and war, and injustices, and everything that's wrong with the world, here and there. Did I tell you that I really enjoyed this book? So now let's move on and talk about cast. I had a little trouble with this because it is a large ensemble of characters. There's tons of deities and people, and honestly, there's so many characters that I'm pretty much open to anything they do with the TV adaptation. I mean, as far as who's gonna play what and who's gonna look like who, I don't really care. Just bring it on, but I definitely hope that they will make progressive steps as far as representation goes. Let's see more characters of color, more characters that are non-traditional, maybe some disabled characters, maybe some non-cis characters. Yes, let's do that because it is 2014. Neil Gaiman is all for it too. I think I read somewhere that he's all for more inclusive representation, and so am I. And with that said, there were 3 characters in particular that I had envisioned as certain people, and I'm gonna tell you who. Number 1 for me was Laura. From the get-go, as soon as I read Laura's character, they describe her with her long, flowing, dark brown hair and bright blue eyes. I thought Zooey Deschanel. Absolutely. And it doesn't matter who they end up casting for this part. To me, Zooey Deschanel will always be Laura in my mind. Now, here's a minor spoiler. Laura is kind of a zombie, so that made zombie Zooey Deschanel. Zombie Deschanel. But I think she would be great at it because she has that little attitude where she's kind of sweet, but kind of not. Hey, bittersweet. That's what zombies are, am I right? Another choice for casting, and of course, this is pretty far-fetched, but I was thinking for Shadow, I couldn't quite picture him starting out, and then the news broke out about that handsome mugshot guy. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's my Shadow. So I kind of imagine him looking a little bit like that guy. Obviously, he's not an actor. He is a criminal. So maybe they should cast somebody that looks like him or something similar. In any case, in the book, he's supposed to have coffee and milk skin. And I'm thinking it would be great if they cast somebody rather darker for Shadow. I wouldn't mind at all if Shadow ended up being African American. In any case, in whatever decision they make, I just hope Shadow is not whitewashed because we've had enough of that on TV. And finally, for Wednesday, I kind of had a few ideas there for casting. Initially, when I started reading, I was thinking of Jerry Stiller as Wednesday. I just pictured him the first few times when he's on the airplane talking to Shadow. Spoilers! And I thought, oh yeah, kind of like a Frank Costanza with like a grayish hair thing going on with a hat. But then later on I thought, no, we need somebody a little taller maybe. And suddenly it hit me. Martin Mull as Wednesday. Of course, this would be kind of a change of pace for him as an actor because, well, I don't know if he's done anything non-comedy, but that's all I know him from. Sabrina the Teenage Witch, Arrested Development, and he's great. But it would be really interesting to see him play a serious, kind of dark, kind of jerkish character. And it would be kind of a treat, really, just to see him step out of his regular roles for something completely different. But if they don't cast him, of course, because I'm not in charge of casting, come on, who am I? Then there's all kinds of people that could play Wednesday. Another choice that I would not mind would be Anthony Hopkins. Sir Anthony Hopkins, I think he would make a killer Wednesday. But then again, how much would you have to pay him, right? Sean Connery as Wednesday? Sean Connery. I cannot do that impression. Damn it, Trebek. No, I can't. But yeah, he would be another cool Wednesday. There's all kinds of actors that could portray him, so I'm really excited to see who they cast. And for the rest of the ensemble, I am looking forward to meeting everyone and seeing what they come up with and how the show turns out. I think that's pretty much everything I had to say about American Gods. So let me know in the comments if you read it before, what you thought, what you like about it, what you're hoping the TV adaptation will be like. If you haven't read it before, I recommend that you go to your nearest bookstore and pick it up, or download it for one of your e-reading devices, or from Amazon for Kindle. They do have a web reading app that you can use straight from your computer if you just want to read it right away. So definitely check out this wonderful book by Neil Gaiman. It's American Gods 10th Anniversary Edition. Or if you'd rather try something a little more lighthearted by Neil Gaiman, I recommend Stardust, which is also full of adventure, a lot more fantasy, a little bit more romance if you're into that sort of thing, but it's not saturated with it. If you like something along these lines with a little more realism thrown in, The Ocean at the End of the Lane is fantastic, and I also recommend it. That might be my favorite Neil Gaiman book, but this is a close second. And finally, if you're into some childhood shenanigans, if you have a kid, or if you're a kid at heart like myself, fortunately, The Milk might be the book for you. So go check it out. With that said, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!